Have you ever noticed how people ask how long you've lived before they ask how well you've lived? I am 99 years old, and I've learned that this question reveals more about the fear of the living than the wisdom of the old. For most of my life, I watched people chase years the way children chase shadows, always stretching forward, never looking down to see where they were standing. They counted birthdays, measured milestones, feared the calendar. And yet, many of them arrived at old age already exhausted, already empty, already gone in every way that mattered. Somewhere along the road, I realized something quietly unsettling. Time does not reward survival. It only exposes how you used it. I have known men who lived long lives and never truly arrived anywhere. And I have known others, gone far too soon, who somehow managed to live more deeply in 50 years than most do in a century. That contrast stayed with me. It followed me through loss, through love, through work, through long evenings when the house was silent and memory was louder than thought. Longevity, I discovered, is not a contest against death. It is a conversation with life. The mistake we make is believing that more days automatically mean more living. They do not. Days are neutral. Years are empty containers. What fills them, or fails to, is entirely up to us. You can extend time without expanding experience. You can preserve the body while neglecting the soul. You can remain alive while quietly disappearing. At some point, I stopped asking how many years I had left and started asking a more dangerous question. How present am I inside the years I'm given? That question changed everything. And what I learned from answering it, slowly, imperfectly, honestly, is what I am here to share. There was a season in my life when I did everything right and felt nothing at all. I was productive, reliable, admired for my discipline. My days were full, yet strangely hollow. I moved from obligation to obligation with the quiet pride of a man who believed endurance itself was virtue. Looking back, I see now that I was alive in the technical sense, but absent in the essential one. That absence crept in quietly. It did not announce itself with tragedy. It arrived disguised as routine. Wake up, perform, endure, sleep, repeat. Years passed that way, smooth, orderly, forgettable. When people speak of time flying, this is what they mean. Life lived without presence leaves no weight behind. The first truth I had to face was uncomfortable. Life does not deepen on its own. It must be entered. We like to imagine that vitality is something youth gives us and age takes away. That is a convenient myth. What truly drains life is not age, but postponement. We postpone joy until circumstances improve. We postpone honesty until it feels safer. We postpone stillness until we have earned rest, and in doing so, we postpone living itself. I remember the day this became clear to me. I was sitting alone, watching light fall across the floor in the late afternoon. Nothing remarkable was happening, and yet, for the first time in years, I was fully there, not planning, not rehearsing, not regretting, just noticing the dust, the warmth, my own breath. It struck me then how rare that state had become, and how much of my life had slipped past while I was elsewhere. From that moment on, I began paying attention not to how much time I had, but to how awake I was inside it. Awake living is not loud. It does not always look successful from the outside. Sometimes it means choosing depth over momentum, truth over comfort, clarity over approval. It means asking questions that cannot be answered quickly and resisting the temptation to numb yourself with noise when the answers take time. Many men mistake motion for meaning. They stay busy because stillness threatens to expose how little they feel. But feeling, real feeling, is the gateway to a life that has texture and color. Without it, even the longest life remains thin. As I aged, I noticed something curious. My world grew smaller, but my experience of it grew richer. I needed fewer places, fewer possessions, fewer distractions. What I needed instead was presence, conversation that mattered, silence that healed, work that felt honest, rest that did not require escape. This is when I understood that vitality is not energy in the youthful sense. It is alignment. When your actions agree with your values, when your words match your inner life, when you are no longer divided against yourself. There were years when I said yes to things that cost me something essential. I did it for security, for reputation, for the approval of people who barely knew me. Those yeses aged me far more than time ever could. Later, when I learned to say no, quietly, without drama, I felt younger than I had in decades. Not because I gained anything, but because I stopped leaking myself away. Quality of life, I learned, is measured by how much of yourself you are allowed to bring into each day. This is why some people grow old gracefully, while others grow old bitterly. Bitterness is not the result of years. It is the residue of unlived truth. Every time you betray what matters to you, it leaves a mark. Over time, those marks accumulate. They harden. They dull the senses. And then people blame age for what was really a lifetime of avoidance. Living fully does not mean living intensely all the time. Intensity burns out quickly. Depth endures. Depth allows for quiet joy, steady purpose, and a sense of internal spaciousness that does not depend on circumstances cooperating. As my body slowed, something else accelerated. My capacity to notice meaning, a shared laugh, a remembered face, a moment of forgiveness, given or received. These things do not add years to life, but they add life to years in a way nothing else can. I stopped chasing the future as a solution and began inhabiting the present as a responsibility. That shift did not make life easier, but it made it real. And reality, even when difficult, is infinitely richer than distraction. I would rather feel deeply and live honestly for a shorter span than drift comfortably through decades untouched by myself. This is the secret most people never hear because they are too busy counting time. Life expands in proportion to attention. Where attention goes, life grows. Where it is withheld, life withers, no matter how many years remain. At 99, I do not measure my life by length. I measure it by moments of truth, by conversations that mattered, by days when I was fully present inside my own skin. Those days still come. Not often, not predictably, but enough. And when they do, time does not feel scarce at all. It feels complete. As time narrowed, I became more selective, not just with how I spent my days, but with how I spent myself. This is something youth rarely understands. Energy feels endless then, so it is scattered carelessly. Later, when energy becomes precious, you learn what truly deserves it. One of the greatest illusions of modern life is that fullness comes from accumulation, more experiences, more roles, more achievements. In truth, life becomes richer through subtraction. You remove what is false. You loosen what is forced. You release the need to perform your life instead of inhabit it. I began by letting go of urgency. Urgency is not purpose. It is anxiety wearing a disguise. When everything feels urgent, nothing feels meaningful. I learned to slow my inner pace even when the world moved quickly around me. That alone returned a surprising amount of life to my days. Another change followed naturally. I stopped rehearsing my worth. For many years, I lived as if I were constantly on trial, proving usefulness, relevance, value. That quiet self-judgment consumed enormous energy. When I finally laid it down, I felt lighter than I had at any earlier age. Living does not require constant justification. Existence is not a performance review. I also learned the power of unfinished days. We are taught to close loops, complete tasks, resolve narratives. But some of the most alive days end without closure, a conversation that trails off, a thought left open, a walk without a destination. These moments stretch time instead of compressing it. They remind you that life is not a problem to be solved, but a presence to be experienced. Meaning, I discovered, is rarely loud. It whispers. And you only hear whispers when you stop shouting at the world with your plans. Relationships changed as well. I stopped collecting people and started meeting them. I no longer needed many connections, only real ones. Depth replaced breadth. Listening replaced impressing. Silence became as important as speech. Some friendships fell away naturally. Others deepened beyond what words could manage. I learned that intimacy is not proximity, but attention. There is a particular joy that comes from being fully with someone without trying to fix, impress, or instruct them. Just being there. That kind of presence adds life not only to your years, but to theirs as well. It is one of the few gifts that multiplies when given. I made peace with loss, not because it hurt less, but because I stopped arguing with it. Loss is not a failure of living. It is proof that you cared. To avoid loss is to avoid depth, and without depth, longevity is hollow. There were days of sadness, days of fatigue, days when memory felt heavier than hope. But even those days became part of a life fully lived once I stopped resisting them. Sorrow, when accepted, has texture. Avoided, it drains life silently. I also learned to respect endings. Not every chapter is meant to be extended. Some moments achieve their fullness precisely because they end. Trying to stretch them only thins them out. Knowing when to let go of roles, expectations, identities keeps life from becoming cluttered with ghosts of who you used to be. Freedom in old age does not come from doing more. It comes from needing less. I no longer chase novelty. I return to what is essential. Simple rituals, familiar places, honest work, quiet reflection. These do not shrink life, they deepen it. Repetition, when chosen consciously, becomes grounding rather than dull. Perhaps the most important shift was this. I stopped living toward someday. Someday when things slow down. Someday when I am finally satisfied. Someday when life begins. That someday never arrives. Life only ever happens where you are standing. When I live now, I live here, not nostalgically in the past, not anxiously in the future. Here, in this breath, this conversation, this moment of awareness. That is where life gathers density. That is where years stop feeling empty. People sometimes ask me what keeps me going. I tell them nothing keeps me going. I am not pushing forward. I am settling inward. And in that inward settling, life feels remarkably full. This is what I wish I had known earlier. You do not need more time to live more deeply. You need more honesty, more presence, more courage to feel what is already here. The rest is noise. A life measured only in years is a thin life. A life measured in presence, truth, and connection, no matter its length, is complete. Now at 99, I no longer argue with time. I do not bargain with it, fear it, or attempt to outpace it. Time has done what it always does. It has revealed. Not how long I lived, but how I lived while I was here. I have learned that adding years to life is a tempting distraction. It feels measurable, safe, impressive. But adding life to years is far more demanding. It asks you to be present when distraction is easier, honest when silence would be safer, awake when drifting would be more comfortable. A full life does not announce itself. It does not require witnesses. It is felt internally, in the quiet knowledge that you did not abandon yourself along the way, that you stayed awake, that you chose depth when surface would have sufficed, that you allowed joy and sorrow alike to leave their mark. If there is anything age has given me, it is clarity, not certainty, clarity. The clarity that life is not something waiting for you in the future, nor something you preserve by holding your breath. It is something you enter, moment by moment, with whatever courage and attention you can muster. Some days you will do this well, other days you will not. Both belong to a life honestly lived. When my time ends, and it will, I will not measure it by how many years were granted. I will measure it by how often I was truly there, by how deeply I listened, by how fully I loved, by how rarely I postponed living in the name of preparation. That is what gives a life weight. That is what makes years feel alive. If you remember anything from my words, let it be this. Do not wait for more time to live more fully. Life does not expand with duration. It expands with presence, and presence is always available, right now,